Okay. Okay. So today is Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and in honor of parents are coming in. In honor of this day, I thought it would be appropriate to talk a little bit about some history of the Jewish community and its relationship with the Black American Jewish community. And because there's the iconic picture in my mind, it's iconic, of the march on Selma, Alabama, back in the early 60s, led by Dr. King, where a person or two over from Dr. King, linked in arm, is a professor of is a professor from the Jewish Theological Seminary, Abraham Joshua Heschel, and with a bushy mane of white hair and a beard. And for me, it's clear. I mean, just because he's a professor at the Jewish Theological Seminary, where I went to rabbinical school, where my father went to rabbinical school. My father had Dr. Heschel as a professor. He passed away long before I got there, tragically, of a heart attack. But it's clear from that picture marching on Selma, Alabama, that Jews and African Americans were linked arm in arm, literally and figuratively, in the struggle for civil rights in America. So, in just reminding me of this relationship, I found two articles on the web. One is from a new magazine called Sapir. Bret Stephens, the New York Times columnist, who used to be a Wall Street Journal columnist, is an editor of this journal, SAPIR. If you just Google that, you'll see interesting articles there in Sapir. And in volume 1 of Sapir from 2 years ago is an article called "The Past and Future of Black-Jewish Relations." And then there was something from the University of Pennsylvania that came up from their Katz Center of Advanced Judaic Studies, did a panel on the very topic as well, which has a very brief summary there. So I just want to highlight some things about this so that we keep in mind what the relationship used to be like and how it has really fallen apart in the past several years. So the summary of the panel discussion that from the University of Pennsylvania brings out, suggests that the intensity of the cooperation between the Black and Jewish community happened because of two synagogue attacks, bombings that took place in Atlanta and in Birmingham in the late 50s. The big Reform temple, Reform synagogue in Atlanta, is called the Temple, and the Temple was infamously attacked in the late 1950s, and also a synagogue in Birmingham, Alabama. Not just the church bombing, but the synagogue was attacked there as well. And the person suggests that highlighted how both the Jews in America, their place in America is iffy, or at least we don't stand on solid ground in America, as we know, with the rise of the exponential rise of anti-Semitic attacks in America lately, and clearly for the Black Jewish community, seeing that there's a target for the Ku Klux Klan other than black people. It's anybody who's not Protestant. So the Jews were very much involved, but those attacks in the South could have intensified the nature of the relationship. The relationship goes back even further than that. The NAACP was founded in 1909 by W.E.B. Du Bois, but had among its leadership Jews. And in fact, Joel Spingarn was a president in 1929. His brother, younger brother, Arthur Spingarn, served until 1966 as the president, and then another Jew, Kivi Kaplan, served as president after him until 1975. So the Association for the Advancement of Colored People, a major nonprofit for raising awareness and helping the cause of blacks in America, were led by Jews. And also, there are other committees that were around in the 50s and early 60s that were set up that were also headed by Jews. And when the Freedom Riders rode in Mississippi, famously, of course, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, and others were killed as Jews fighting for the civil rights for blacks. Also, we all remember Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech in the March on Washington in the early 60s. We might not remember that a rabbi gave the invocation before Dr. King spoke. And that rabbi was a German Jew who escaped Germany in a Holocaust, Joachim Prinz. Was a rabbi in Newark, New Jersey, and became active in the civil rights movement, and one of the first rabbis to be involved. And because of his activity, you could Google Rabbi Prinz, Prinz, invocation at March on Washington, and you can read his very moving invocation that day. So Joachim Prinz became a spokesperson within the Jewish community as well for the black, for uniting with the black community in the cause for civil rights. Now, it shouldn't be unusual or we shouldn't have to ask a question about why would Jews be involved in this cause. But back in the time of the Civil War, not all Jews were anti-slavery. So I have spoken in the synagogue before about this. There were Jews, of course, who were abolitionists, and there were Jews who were pro-slavery. So there were rabbis in the South who were pro-slavery, and rabbis in the North who are anti-slavery, and they both sides of the coin had sources in the Bible to support their opinion, and there were Jews who were slave owners. And there were Jews who were involved in the slave trade as well. So not all the time were Jews involved in the rights of the other in seeking full equality and justice in America. It took time as Jews were coming escaping poverty, persecution in Eastern Europe from the 1880s to the 1920s, and becoming quickly part of America. It's from that point that Jews were seeing the plight of the other as a cause to get involved in, and so there were many rabbis who were involved because of Abraham Joshua Heschel and because of Joachim Prinz, who marched there in Selma. There were Dr. King was invited just a month before he was assassinated to the annual rabbinic convention of conservative rabbis in the Catskills, where the convention was always held. And there's a picture of him on the dais with Rabbi Everett Gendler, who I knew from my 5 years in Massachusetts, in Lowell, Massachusetts. He was the Reform rabbi in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I'm sorry to say that at the time when I got to Lowell, I had heard the name Everett Gendler, but I didn't really know who he was and what he was involved in until I moved down here and said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe I had that opportunity to meet this civil rights giant that Everett Gendler was." And so there's Everett Gendler in this picture, sitting right next to Dr. King, who's standing at the podium speaking at the convention in 1968. So lots of rabbis were involved in the civil rights movement, and lots of Jews were involved then too, not just on the NAACP, but in other ways as well. Tragically, though, after Dr. King's assassination, other forces wanted a say in the future of the civil rights movement and advocacy for blacks in America, and those voices were not as pro-Jewish as Dr. King was. Dr. King knew that he felt that whoever could give help to the cause was worth getting the help from, and saw the Jews as a model. And Dr. King didn't hesitate in quoting Jewish scripture, what he would call the Old Testament, but the Jewish Bible, in his famous speech, quoting the prophet Amos and maybe Isaiah or Jeremiah as well. So Dr. King knew and was more than willing to work with the Jewish community to help the cause. There are others who are a bit more militant, who might have said, we should really be in this ourselves, and we don't need anybody's help. We need to do this ourselves. And some of those voices became anti-Semitic voices too. So the article from Sapir points out some comments from Malcolm X, comments from Stogie Carmichael, comments then later from Louis Farrakhan, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who famously, while running for president, an audio clip was leaked saying that, referring to New York as Hymietown. So we might remember those references. So Farrakhan is a rabid anti-Semite, and I just want to see, right. So there's a paragraph in the article. Louis Farrakhan, whom the ADL has called the leading anti-Semite in America, his assaults on Jews as termites, his description of Judaism as a gutter religion, his declaration that Hitler was a great man, later modified to wickedly great, has been widely reported. The Nation of Islam has distributed the notorious fabrication, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, as well as a tract of its own, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, which is the Bible of the new anti-Semitism. So unfortunately, because of these leaders of the Black community who are vocally and rabidly anti-Semitic, the relationship between Jews and Blacks has splintered. And they're also, the Black Lives Matter movement has also been seen originally on its website and its platform as supporting other people struggling for rights, and including raising a call to be in opposition to Israel as an apartheid state. So that's originally when the Black Lives Matter movement started. On its website now, you won't find that. But so the damage has been done to what had been a very fruitful, positive relationship, which inspired people to action and rallied people around a bigger vision of what of how Dr. King referred to it. I have a dream of a day when Black children, white children can be free in America to play together, learn together, et cetera, et cetera. So and that who wouldn't want to be involved in something like that and see that as a vision to work toward? But when Black leaders in the 80s and the 90s were quoted as spewing anti-Semitism, made it hard for Jewish organizations to continue publicly supporting the Black cause. So our relationship has splintered to the point where we as a congregation and our social action committee has tried the past couple of years under, since COVID started and we're doing everything, lots of things with Zoom, we tried to have a relationship with two different Black churches in the area. First, there's the Sharp Street Church here in Sandy Spring, one of the older churches in the area, Black churches in the area. I think it goes back to the 1820s, to try to have a relationship with them. And we were invited to their Juneteenth service, and I was graciously invited to participate in that service. And we had one other session with them, but then there was really no energy to move it forward. And then Lisa Hedgepath, the chairman of our committee, has a friend in her neighborhood who's involved in a church in Burtonsville, and we tried a couple of sessions there as well, but again, the energy wasn't there to try to move this forward, and there was also a hesitancy that we felt from the leadership that we were working with of really wanted to pursue this, and they really wanted to try to understand what's our motive in doing this. What are we after? And we really weren't after anything except working together, kind of learning from each other, that kind of thing. But there's a sense that has this article refers to it, and others have this sense as well, that for Blacks, we Jews are white, and therefore they don't see below the surface, oh, we're Jewish, and oh, we have been subject historically for thousands of years to anti-Semitism, to bigotry, to oppression, to murder because of who we are. The surface is we're white, so we're part of the white culture, and we need to be held in we can't exactly trust us because we're white. So I mean, I could see that most Jews in America are white, but it's a tragedy that when we had fruitful relations working together 60 years ago with the Black community, that it is so far fractured that people don't remember. Leadership in the Black community doesn't remember anymore that who we are as a people, who we are below the surface, they're only seeing the surface, that we're whites and we're just like everybody else. So the how to fix this, I'm not sure how to fix it. I'm just a peon. I'm not a leader, and I don't have any say in any of this. And I don't know what would be what would be motive enough to try to get Jewish organizations to try to work together. It's possible work together with Black American organizations. It's possible that behind the scenes, ADL is working with the NAACP or other Black leadership organizations. It's possible, but you don't really hear about it in public. And perhaps it's not politically the right time to go public with this kind of relationship, but I would think it would be. In this day and age in which people are just spewing hatred right and left, and that police violence against Black people, George Floyd, incidents like that keep happening within the Black community. With just bigotry in general in this country, it would make sense for those who are the target of such hatred to work together to try to overcome it, to try to educate, to try to rally the troops, not in a violent way. I don't mean that. I just mean metaphorically, to try to rally people together to stand up for the values of love, justice, and harmony, and to be a wall against the hatred, and to put it down. So that's what I wanted to say about this. Any questions or comments about this that you have? So I didn't have an hour of worth of stuff to say. I think it was just enough to just point out the history and then to raise the issues. Yes, Lori, unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great talk. One of the things just going through my mind as a possible starting place has to do with the relationship of Ashkenazi white Jews and Jews of color.
Ah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, that's absolutely right, and we find that more so in Israel today than in America. I mean, there's a larger population of Ethiopian Jews, clearly black-skinned Jews in Israel than we do here. Yet you certainly have Black Jews in America, or Jews of color in America, and there are organizations. Just Google Jews of color, and there's an organization for them too. Whether that people who converted to Judaism or people who are adopted, people of color who are adopted as babies.
Yeah, and they have a hard time in the
Right,
Jewish
you have a
community.
hard time walking into a synagogue and being accepted. So yes, no, it's absolutely true that there is, by human nature, tragically, human nature is such that our first response to seeing somebody different from us isn't, oh, let's give you a hug, but rather to be a bit wary.
Yeah, or are you Jewish even?
Well, but no, but stepping back from that, no matter what we are, uh, when we see someone different from us, what our initial reaction as a human being is not to say, "Oh, you are a friend," but rather to be wary. It's how we're brought up, perhaps, or just something in the DNA of a human being is to be a bit wary of our surroundings. I don't know if that's, but I think that psychologically, biologically, there's something to that. So, so when subconsciously we go to synagogue and see that 99.9% of the people there look like us in terms of color of skin, and then somebody who looks different walks in, I'm not sure how many people would be welcoming in with open
Yeah,
arms, and it's been hard for Jews of color to find open, welcoming communities,
right. And
and
that
then
speaks to the work that we have to do.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. We have tons of work to have to do with that, and yes, that's one of the many social justice projects that we should have on our plate to better ourselves and better our community. But just to highlight this, I mean the Israel itself in its 75 years of history has also had, so on the one hand, they're saving Jews. They see it as a mission, the government of Israel, to save Jews in distress. So, to work behind the scenes to try to bring the Russian Jews out. And now there's an uproar in Israel as to change the law of return, which would have made several 100,000 of those Jews who were brought in and became citizens right away, there would call their citizenship into question as to whether they're Jewish or not. And then to also work in the mid 80s to bring the Ethiopian Jews on airlifts out of Ethiopia to Israel. So so Israel has done the work, but then how to integrate the Ethiopian Jews into Israeli society. So there is great racism and discrimination in Israeli society. The Israeli army sees as its mission to be the melting pot for Israeli society. So all Jews, no matter background, no matter skin color, have to serve in the army when they turn 18. So you might be brought up in your ivory tower, literally white tower in Israel, but then when you get to the army, you see all kinds of people. So it helps a little bit, but still, Ethiopian Jews face discrimination to the point where I still remember this in the early 90s when the army, every army does this. They do a blood drive among its soldiers, and Ethiopian Jewish soldiers who gave blood, their blood was thrown away. So because of the fear that they're carrying AIDS. That scandal became public, and it was just a terrible thing to read about. How could Israel, which should stands on being the Hebrew phrase "Or Lagoyim," the light unto the nations, how could it do something so terrible like that? So, yeah, so that we have the idea of discrimination, the fear of the other that's part of human nature. That's our job as Jews, is to overcome that and to see back in Genesis chapter 1, the ideal being that we're all created in God's image. And chapter 1 doesn't say what color skin Adam and Eve were created in, just said that Adam and Eve were created. So, human beings are created in the image of God. All creatures are created in the image of God, and that's what we need to fight for. Any other thoughts or questions or comments? So the legacy of Dr. King is that the struggle continues, and we as Jews need to continue in that struggle, not just for us to defeat anti-Semitism in America, but also to work with others who are facing bigotry too, because their problem is our problem. Any human being that is not free is a problem for all human beings. And that's I think that's our moral imperative and meaning for life on earth is to ensure that all can live freely, safely, with justice. So have a good day, everybody, and hope that this Martin Luther King Day will be a day of meaningful service as well for us. And see you next Monday.
thank you.